Thanks, Madam Chair.
Montanans here this morning.
That's right. Montanans on that side, Montanans this side. Good to have you here this morning, Chief Tidwell. It was a month ago. I was back home in Montana, traveled across the state, and we spent a lot of time talking about what's going on in our national forest and in timber. I was in Columbia Falls. I was in Missoula. I was in Bozeman. We were meeting with sawmills, sawmill operators, sportsman groups, conservation groups, county commissioners. In fact, to have sawmill operators there who are looking at layoffs that happened last fall because of, frankly, stopped timber sales, and fears as spring breakup is coming earlier in the West because of the warm February and the warm early start to March. To hear a sawmill operator concerned, he has a son who has some special medical needs and to possibly lose their health insurance. They have to go to Spokane every week for this. Just to hear these stories of the human condition right now as we face a declining access here to timber. And yet here we are surrounded by, I think it was 17 million acres there in Montana of forest, 11 million acres we probably have access to if you subtract out the wilderness and the roadless areas. And we can't get enough logs. If I asked, what's the constraint? Why are the sawmills running at 2/3 capacity across the state? Because we can't get enough logs as we're staring at 11 million acres of timber that we could access on our federal lands. The Forest Service anticipates selling 3.2 billion board feet of timber in FY16. It's a modest increase over this year's target. That's a step in the right direction, but my understanding is the ASQ, the allowable sale quantity in the plans by the Forest Service exceeds 6 billion board feet, twice as much as what's being sold today. We heard from groups across Montana a month ago that across the board, whether it's from the sawmills to the conservation groups, that increasing responsible harvests can have positive environmental and social impacts, reducing the risk of wildfire. It's not going to be the catch-all, but it's part of management and risk reduction, improving wildlife habitat, improving watersheds, improving water quality, maximizing carbon sequestration in our forests, and expanding recreational opportunities. So we've got agreement on the spectrum back home. And I know, Mr. Tidwell, your volume targets are informed in large part by your resources and the time it takes to prepare and execute timber sales, as you've noted today. But setting aside those factors for a moment, do you agree in principle that increasing responsible harvests consistent with the forest plans would have positive impacts on creating and sustaining forest-related jobs as well as improving the health of the forests?
Yes. I mean, it's you mentioned the level of agreement that we have on what work needs to occur to restore these national forests. It's greater today than it's ever been in my entire career. And we are seeing some progress being made in other parts of the country more than what we're seeing there in Montana, even though I appreciate the work that our folks did last year working with all of our partners to actually have treat the most, they basically put under contract the most acres and the most board feet that we've had in a long time. So we're moving in the right direction. But it's not enough of what's needed to really restore these forests. We need to be able to look at these larger landscapes and to have more multi-year contracts in place so that those mill owners can make the investments. They can take those contracts to the bank to be able to borrow the money, to be able to maintain their
Yeah, well,
infrastructure.
it's shocking talking to the mill operators. When I ask, well, where are you getting your logs today? And literally today, here we are surrounded by millions of acres of federal lands in Montana. They're bringing logs in from Oregon, Washington, Wyoming, and Canada to try to keep the mills operating. And one of the challenges we're facing back home, certainly, and we're talking about this all the time, is looking at what's going on with these objections and the litigation. Looking at the Region 1 staff data that was provided to us, since the beginning of FY09, 46 of the 65 non-categorical exclusion NEPA projects with a timber component were appealed, or more recently objected to. 25 of the 65 were litigated. And The problem we've got now with our timber folks back home is they're giving up because of the uncertainty of pursuing the path down. Because sometimes they say, why aren't they making more applications? Well, there's so much uncertainty now in the outcome because of the objections and litigations and appeals and so forth. They're going out of state and even to Canada to get logs today. Even a number of the collaborative-driven projects have been litigated or have litigation pending. The collaboratives, as you know, Colt Summit was one of those, and the East Reservoir project on the Kootenai. In your recent testimony for the Energy and Resources Committee, you indicated that such obstruction has an adverse impact and clearly can divert Forest Service staff from preparing new timber sales. So focusing now on looking at solutions and working together on this, because I think we both agree we've got a problem. I think requiring all projects to go through a pre-decision objections process was a good step, but events on the ground in Montana suggest it's not sufficient, it's not enough. What additional solutions do you support to further discourage unnecessary obstruction and litigation in Montana and other impacted states so that the Forest Service could be liberated to do its important work?
Well, I think there's a couple things we need to first maintain what's proving to be successful. And as you've mentioned, the collaborative efforts there in your state are making a difference. When you look at when we have gone to court, and I'll use Colt Summit as a perfect example, and when we've gone to court there, we not only have the state and the county, but we have environmental groups that are standing with the Forest Service, arguing to the judge that this is a good project, this is a good timber sale.
Well, we'll just back on that, and we agree on the collaboratives. I support that, but it's even our collaboratives are being litigated. So I think we need additional protections, and I guess what I'd ask, I'm running out of time here, is would you commit to working with me to develop some mutually acceptable solutions here to work through this?
Yeah, I'm more than willing to sit down with this committee and with you personally to be able to look at what we can do as we move forward, to be able to build on the success, to be able to get the treatment on the land that's necessary to restore these forests. I do believe that the more that we can be talking about what is needed on the land, what we need to be able to do to restore these forests. And yes, one of the key outputs is going to be timber, is going to be saw logs. And it's essential that we maintain that integrated wood products industry, or otherwise there's no way we're going to be able to do the work.
Yeah, well, we were at 600 million board feet at the peak. We were at 100 million board feet last year. We've been pretty flat. And so what we're asking for here is not, we understand we're never going to get to 600 million again, most likely. I mean, it's been an over 80% decline. We've lost 20 of our 30 sawmills. Yeah. Lost. But what we would like to see is let's take that 100 million up to maybe 200 million, maybe 300 million board feet, and that would be off of our federal lands. That would be a tremendous boost right now to our sawmills and our timber industry back home, as well as making our forests healthier. And our counties right now, we're dealing with SRS and so forth. They're in trouble because there's no more revenues coming off the forests.
Well, Senator, once again, I commit to work with you, and I think your approach on that is to be able to get up to a sustainable level that not only the industry can rely on, but it will actually be enough acres being treated where we can make a difference so that 10 years from now, we can have a different discussion about the conditions of the forests in your state versus having the same discussion 10 years from now.
I'll look forward to that discussion, too. Thanks, Chief Tidwell.